Some will say Tony Blair, the others will say WEF, Agenda 2030, immigration, social media, internet, you name it, right? So many different opinions. I actually have 5 events which happened over the last 5 decades. And I don't see it as a conspiracy, a long conspiracy. I see it as a chain of events which, unfortunately for us, happened, and we kind of allowed it to happen. Maybe there were some nefarious plans here and there, but I don't think it was all 50 years, right? I'm going to give you 5 events which shaped current position, current landscape of the West and where we are right now. And we're actually facing all these consequences. And just to make it sure, it's like I'm not a historian or anything, right? I'm just doing it for fun. I am an entrepreneur, so I look at things and problems. And when I see a problem, I pay attention because that's where the business is. So these 5 events, they're big problems, happened over the last 5 decades, and they affected very much all of our lives right now. So we're going to start with the first one, and I'm going to move back to, we're going to have to go back to 1971 when President Nixon, it was Bretton Woods, where he basically decided that dollar, American dollar money is no longer backed by gold. You see, I think this was the beginning of the end. From that moment on, basically the governments, particularly Americans, they allowed out themselves to print money out of thin air. They took the peg, which was the gold, which was meant to make sound money, real money, and they said, "Look, we're going to do it temporary, as they always do, and we're just going to leave it for now until whatever we're going to solve our problems, and we're going to go back to which they never have." Instead, what they did, they found out a new peg, and that was oil. And this, as we all know, led to all these never-ending wars, conflict, destruction of Middle East. And as soon as there was a country with oil, Americans wanted all of it, right? Because it was a power of their dollar. So with it, they could just print money forever. They could just pump this debt-based economy forever, profiting from it, while half of the world was suffering, right? And West, part of Europe, obviously, and England was part of this deal. So they were all profiting from it. Unfortunately, others were paying for it. And that was the number one, right? So we're going back to 1971, Bretton Woods, gold standard removed. Since from that moment on, we have endless wars, destroyed Middle East, and oil being a new gold. Now, this, you say, as we stopped producing real value and we started printing actual money, the money from out of thin air, paper money, something else happened there. Like we needed someone else to make things for us, for the West to consume, right? So we've had money, we became more lazy, less motivated to actually build things. So we started looking elsewhere, and obviously West and Americans particularly looked where? They looked towards China. So number two, my second point would be outsourcing manufacturing to China. China basically became the factory of the West. At the beginning, it was the funny factory. It was just producing cheap Chinese goods. Nobody, everybody was laughing at it. Everything was still produced in the West, but slowly, within the next 3 decades, the production moved completely to China, and Chinese became better and better and started producing really quality stuff. As we see now, they have as good quality, or even not better, when it comes to tech, cars, and everything, right? And that was late 70s to 90s when manufacturing was sent to China because of the cheap labor. So we started noticing cheap imports and to keep inflation low and illusion of prosperity, right? So there was more money in the bank accounts, therefore a very average Jones were allowed to buy more, houses, cars, one salary, right? Was able to provide for the whole family, and it was working sort of, and working class was happy, right? However, there was a period when the transition happened. It also happened in the UK, where the consumerism replaced productions completely as a identity, and a lot of workers were left out without jobs. And that was the first time when people started feeling let down because they could not find any jobs. You could not be a banker to profit from all this money going left and right? You couldn't produce anything because all the production lines, manufacturing line, factories were closing down because it was not financially viable to produce anymore. And to maintain the growth and to keep people happy, countries would have to create more debt and the speculation, and then which led to service economy. And service economy, by the way, this is what is still in Poland. This is what happened in Poland over the last 3 decades. Service economy, right? The boom in service economy, which is about to end now. It's already ended. The pain is coming, but that's for a different video. So the cultural consequences of it was the pride in work was replaced with a addiction to consumerism. Okay, people stopped being proud of what they do. They stopped producing. They forgot, as we know now. We don't know how to produce these things anymore, and they were just drifting more towards consumerism. You see, this replaced the meaning with material comfort. And when comfort became a religion, as it has become over the last few decades, connections start to fade, communities start to fall apart. And the next revolution didn't destroy our factories, it destroyed our communities and families. So while the community was already struggling, families were struggling because of less work, less jobs, and the connections started fading between family members and families and neighbors. There was more friction and problems. Internet showed up. Okay, we were introduced to this amazing innovation which changed the world forever. It's the internet, which also meant a death of community. Okay, so that was the final nail to the coffin for the communities and families as well. So the early web promised freedom and knowledge. I'm old enough to remember time where there was no internet when I was a little kid, and the internet was introduced, and we started using slowly because it was very expensive, very slow, all of that. But at the beginning, it was everything. The opportunities were endless. The potential for information. We thought it's going to change the world for so much better because suddenly we won't need to look for information ever. Information will be there free available for everyone. We thought it's going to be the land of freedom because there will be no way you can actually suspend information, you can control the narrative, speech, and questions about whatever that is, science, education, right? That was the early days of internet, and it promised all of it. Unfortunately, as we know right now, this is not exactly what happened, right? But before we ended up where we are now, the internet took something else from us. So by destroying communities, it gave us convenience. Okay, it replaced connections with convenience. We started looking for more easy way, getting things easier, faster, and still cheaper. Don't forget, since 1971, everything had to be done cheaper because the money was being printed, more money to buy things, more debt. We needed to buy more things to keep ourselves happy, to keep growing, and everything had to be cheaper than before. That's why we were allowed to buy more things, right? Apart from housing, which was obviously increasing, but so were our wages. So we're kind of able to buy houses. Your parents or their parents, well, their wealth was smaller than your parents. Your parents were supposed to be your parents were supposed to be smaller than yours, but something broke along the way, which we are talking about. So online life, remove family time, neighbor trust, shared rituals, libraries, the actual hunger for knowledge. Because when something became free and available everywhere, it lost its value. It's what I see in business. It's what you see in everyday life. Things for free are just not valuable as much for other people. So people stop looking for them. Instead, we start looking for more consumerism around us, buying more things cheaper, more and more and more and more, all while distancing ourselves from each other, right? So the kids would spend more time on the internet. Like, especially my generation, we were the first one to start actually spending that time really, really on the internet, really looking, watching movies, watching some playing games, looking for new, piece of information, which again at the beginning was very exciting, but soon that information overload killed local belonging. Right, it was so hard to and pointless even to go out to do things because everything was already online. So we became this kind of a global citizen without roots, with no roots, because we all were connected through the network on the web. And the societal fabric that once held the West together, the glue, it just started to dissolve. It started to dissolve really fast in front of all of us. And then came the moment that turned that disconnection into dependency. Okay. And that is when the internet stopped being a tool and it actually became us. And that's point number fourth event, coming directly from internet, which was a social media and the collapse of European and Western values. Okay. I say the first real social media which was responsible for it is Facebook, or as we call it today, Meta. Before that, as some of you might know, it was a MySpace, which I actually haven't never used MySpace, but Facebook was the first one which everybody was using with my age. Every teenager, every parent, even grandparents. That was the time where everybody would go on the Facebook. They would post pictures. You look at everything. That was just everything. Everybody was on Facebook posting everything. That's where it became the thing. And this is where reality filtered through algorithms. That's where it all started, right? We stopped. We not going to stop. We lost the whole connection with reality, the real reality. As we are not always happy. We're not that much successful. We have our problems. But Facebook removed that. Nobody would talk about it. We would post happy pictures, achievements, work achievements, career progressions, holiday pictures, new car, all of it, new music. The more you knew, the more you posted, the better you felt. And then your neighbors would try to even outcompete you in this, and then your family members, and then your friends from school, from work. Everybody was doing it, and then the attention became a currency, right? So we moved from the actual communities and shared values to actually attention-seeking societies, really, and not really communities, right? There was an outrage, identity wars, narcissism, all of these things. The algorithms, they started picking it up, and yeah, amplifying, right? Amplifying. The more anger, the more division, the more polarization, the more views, the more likes, the more clicks or dislikes. But that was it. That was the currency of the internet. That still is. Now it's even more. You've had faith, meaning, and national or nationhood turned into hashtags, turned into posts, turned into comments. Meanwhile, we've had this destabilized Middle East, as I mentioned from the point one, which is still going on all these, many decades, which led to first big migration wave, right? So while we're too busy building our personas on the internet, our avatars, our political leadership was busy getting their oil and money from wherever they could, so we can actually they can keep us happy, building like progress, so to say. And with it, the consequences were destroyed countries, communities down there, and the huge migration waves, which was the accelerated the fall of communities, and obviously they increased the polarization, and we've seen all these changes, and it happened with Tony Blair in the UK, and with Angela Merkel in the Germany and in EU, European Union, right, when they opened all the borders, started replacing or updating populations, as you say it, and this led to moral confusion. We've been for many years. We wouldn't accept what was happening, right? Remember this? I remember very well, especially European Union. People would just not. They would refuse to accept what was happening, although it was happening everywhere, right? And that was a moment, so point four, where the old European spine, Christian values, culture, civil, all of these things we've built up until now, they've been replaced by algorithms and morality and imported chaos, right? It was all immorality, sorry. It was all replaced, removed, without us even noticing. It's just happened, sort of smooth progression, just a few years. And that transition, it was when a civilization, loses its meaning. It craves control. It's just sort of our human nature. It's when we fear, when we start being afraid, and this brought a lot of fear to all our lives. When we are afraid, we are happy to hand that control over to somebody else who will offer us a solution. And that is taking us to our final point, 5. Yeah, 2020. the pandemic. See, I see it as a global test, which we failed. Again, I'm not saying it's been it's a conspiracy theory. It very much can be. Who knows? We never find out the truth. But what we do know is the test. It was a test, global test, which we failed in almost every country, if not in every single country in around the world. Think about it, right? The scale of it. So as we were scared and confused and lost our understanding, and we really remember, before 2020, there was a lot of attacks happening. It was fear, the fear everywhere, and we suddenly got this quiet time, the lockdowns, censorship, confused messages coming from the government officials. One day you're allowed to do things, the other way, the next day they're saying you're not allowed to do the same thing. Then the third day they're gonna laugh at the day before, saying how it was actually stupid. Then you've had all the lies, all the manipulations, all the politicians and public figures and VIPs lying openly, being caught again, and it's been going on and on. And it was, we promised it's going to take short time. It's going to be just for a few weeks, few days, for our own safety. Everybody was cheering. Remember, clapping for the NHS and all of that, right? And this was a time where Western population accepted the government intrusion like never seen before. Like it was a time where we just surrendered all our freedoms, all our rights to people. They were constantly replaced. I don't know if you remember. It was so long. There were different people in the government, different countries coming in and out. This minister, that minister, and we were still just giving these freedoms and more. The pushing, they were more pushing. Right, the screwing, the screws around our freedoms, our lives more, without any proper pushback from anyone. And then you've had the tech giants, which build, as I said in my previous points, this web, this thing to keep us, dependent on them, and it's just disconnected from each other and from our values, from who we were. Uh, Other, pharma companies, media companies, newspapers, TV, all these people, fear everywhere, disparity, depression. Um, it just shattered the final illusion of freedom, which we thought we had, which probably we didn't by that time. And it was replaced with a safety, and for your good, we're going to keep you at home for your own safety. And you're not allowed to see people, and you're not allowed to go places, and just because. And that was a time where we stopped actually questioning authority. That was a time where we just accepted. If somebody would say to you, like it was in Poland, you're not allowed to go to a forest, people would not go to forest. Wouldn't ask, we've seen videos happening in Spain, and people were on the beach chased by police on the motorbikes or something like that. You think about this now, it's crazy, right? But that's what it was. That's how it was for a few years. And that was the last final moment where we've lost it all, in my opinion, where there was no way we could go back to what was before. The 5 decades of taking it from us. Again, I don't think it was a pre-planned process for that long. Maybe there was planned partly somewhere. Maybe it happened maybe 20th century, 21st, I don't know, 21st century, sorry, after 2000. I don't know. I don't think this can be planned that as much with our human nature, unless you accept there's some different beings or, rule over us or something. But that was a time where we stopped being us and we became new us as we are now. This is where we are now as a new West, new Europe. We're facing consequences of all those decisions we allowed to happen. Us, me, you, me, our parents, pretty much 3, 4 generations. And if you think about it, it's just a cycle of life. It's the tragedy of it. It's just the acceleration, the speed of happening, and tech, which will enslave us to such a degree comparing to what it was, that we won't be able to kind of get ourselves free again for a very long time, at least, in my opinion. Now, don't get me wrong, we will adapt. So my kids probably they won't understand this kind of freedom. It's like us talking about medieval times where people would just travel across, between towns, and there would be like all sort of wild things happening, and they would sleep in the forest and hunt, and all these things you can't imagine, the kind of crazy freedom. You could just travel around across, no documents, nothing. Like, we can't understand this very much. We're listening about this, read about it in the books, but this is what our kids, my kids, will probably learn from me, from us as parents and family, and books maybe, although their books are being changed, right? But I think, we will adapt to one another. Maybe it's going to be some sort of matrix. Maybe this is our way. Maybe we have to go this way. Or maybe things will fall apart there is a chance of this happening. I don't know if it's good or not before it will be finalized. Or maybe that full part, that final, fallout will be what they call the great, was it great reset, right? The great reset. Or something. Maybe we'll find out soon. Probably in my lifetime. Maybe very soon, maybe in the next few years, which I think we might do. But this is where we are. This is how I see what happened. I would like to know what you think. If you agree, these are the 5 points, or maybe you have some other points to add, or maybe you think there are some things which actually had bigger impact on our lives, because there's so many been going on over the last few decades, right? And obviously it's easy to oversee it or to forget. But I'd love to hear your opinion. Now, if you like this video, please do leave me a like. Consider subscribing to my channel if you're not subscribing. I would love to, I'd like to thank you very much for all your support, all the likes, all the comments. The channel is going, it's growing great. Although the last few weeks have been very slow-ish, but I think that's just the nature of YouTube. And, I can't always make, I suppose, very good materials, videos, although I'm trying. But still, the channel is growing. I would like to thank you for all your support, all the likes, for being here for me. If you like this video, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think, if you agree or not. Just be respectful and stay positive. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay eventually. Cheers.